Hiya! So I am making another video on the English language proficiency assessment for California, and I can say proficiency better than that. English language proficiency assessment for California. Okay, so obviously it's nicknamed the ELPAC, and I've created this slideshow to be kind of short because I wanted to get down to the bare bones. As I was researching this, I found a lot of the official information, of course, was very, very wordy, and it was very, it was a little difficult for me to understand. So I wanted to try to find the bare bones of it and figure out a little bit more of the mechanics of it, because I didn't want to just input a whole bunch of facts with a lot of long words and educational terms. So I thought I would start off by giving a couple of terms to know. So, sorry, cell phone. So I thought I would give a couple terms to know. So, two of the terms that I'm going to be using a lot throughout this video is English learner and English language proficiency. An English learner is a student whose first language is not English and who is learning English at school. So they come to the school, their first language is not English. They may know some English, they may not know any. And that's what we try to figure out, and that's why we try to teach them a little more. Because for a student, especially a student who does not speak English or speaks very little English, to get through the public school system in California needs to know and understand English. So that's what the goal here is. English language proficiency is the measure of how much English they know. How proficient are they in English? So obviously, and proficiency is measured by the ability to fluently speak, read, write, or understand the English language. So what is ELPAC? The English language proficiency assessment for California. That's a mouthful. It is a test that measures English language proficiency. Like I said before, we want to make sure that the students are understanding English because the content, the subjects are taught in English. So it is a replacement of the current system, which is the California English Language Development Test, nicknamed the CELT because it's a lot quicker to say than that big old mouthful. And it requires state test for English language proficiency. Excuse me. So it's the current test that they measure, and I'll get down to it at the very end, what the comparisons between the old system and the new system. And it must be given to all students whose primary language is not English. There's an air show, so some of these airplanes, they don't sound normal, and I can't see them. Okay, anyways. So the California Department of Education is replacing the CELT with the ELPAC, and it will be enacted in the 2018-2019 school year. So we just finished, or some districts are currently finishing, the 2016-2017 school year. Next year will be 2017-2018, and the year after that will be 18-19. So in 2 more years, we will have this transition completed, and the 2018-2019 school year will be the first year, beginning in July 1st, that it will be active, and that'll be it. There won't be any more CELT. So the ELPAC is aligned with the 2012 California English Language Developmental Standards. So California has dictated standards for every subject area. As a social science credentialist, there is you have the standards basically dictate what the students should know when. So in this grade, the students need to know this standards, these standards, these standards, these standards. It's what they're expected to know of the content area. So they also develop some for the English language. So by this time, if the students are here in their English language development, then they should be here by the next year. They should be here by the next year, and based on their grade level, and that's how the standards work. So it's comprised of 2 separate English language proficiency assessments, the initial identification of an English learner, and an annual summative assessment to measure their progress. So where are they? As they enter the public school system and English is their second language, where are they within their English development? How much English do they know? and then test them annually to measure their growth and measure their progress and measure how much they understand, what are they having troubles with, and stuff like that. So the purpose of the English language proficiency test is to help students. It's not a test like the big standardized tests that get graded and everything. It's not that. What it is it helps the students know where they are, and helps their teachers actually know where they are in their English understanding, and to help them, okay, so this is where they are. Now let's help them understand more, and have students gain a better and better understanding of English. Excuse me, I got hiccups. And to achieve knowledge, skills, and abilities, because ultimately, English students who are learning English need to be prepared to go to college, need to be prepared to have a career in California. So to survive, I don't want to use the word survive, but I kind of like it. To be successful within the California public education system, you need to know English. You have to have a fundamental understanding of English, because the subject matter, the classes, everything is taught in English. It would be like me moving to Mexico. If I move to Mexico, all the classes are taught in Spanish. I almost said Mexican, but I know better. All of the classes are taught in Spanish. I have a working understanding of Spanish, but I am not fluent by any means. So if I were to move to Mexico, I would have to not only learn Spanish, but I would have to learn how to understand the subject material taught to me, because it's taught to me in Spanish. So the academic portion is in Spanish, and my social interactions would also be in Spanish. So that's essentially what we're doing. Is it needed? So it is needed. Like I said, if a student comes to California and moves to California and knows very limited or no English at all, they need English to be able to thrive in the state of California, be it academically, socially, or work related. You need to know English to be able to work, to be able to get a job, to be able to go to school. What else is there? Navigate socially or even physically. You need to know English. And so it focuses on English as a second language and making sure that students are learning academic content, the skills that they need in that second language. So how the ELPAC works. So English language proficiency standards aim to ensure linguistic, cognitive, and academic potential. So every student has the potential for greatness, basically, and we want to help students achieve their potential. And to do so, California aligns with the supportive development of language capacities found in the state content standards. So along with the standards that say 8th grade needs to know these things about U.S. history and stuff like that, there's also the standards that say based on this much knowledge and skill, student needs to know this much English, this much English, this much English. And so they work together. So the ELPAC assessment areas, they assess, so there's 4 areas: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, which I'm sure any education or educators or credential students have been kind of drilled in your head: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It's not enough to just speak, for me. It's not enough to just speak Spanish. Assuming that I were moving down to Mexico, just using that example, it's not enough for me to just listen to Spanish. I would have to listen to it and understand it. I would have to speak it correctly. I would be able to read the test that's put in front of me in Spanish, and I need to be able to write my response in Spanish. So I hope that makes sense and gives a more clear picture on how important this really is to a student who's not an English speaker. You can't just toss somebody in there and just say, oh, get it, because no, they're not gonna. Why would you do that? That's so mean, first off. But second off, the child is not going to thrive. And we want our students to thrive, bottom line. Okay. how many more? Okay. So the CELT and the ELPAC comparisons. So these right here, this is the current CELT, and it was aligned with the 2012 standards, and this is the ELPAC. So when the ELPAC goes through, you can see it's a little more detailed. So you want them to listen to a story and listen to an oral presentation. You want them normal speech functions. You want them to describe a picture. So it's not enough to just be able to hold a conversation. If you can have that mental capacity to explain something that you see, like these flowers in front of me. They've got green stems, they've got white. Can I pull them out? Okay. So you've got the green stems, you've got the white flowers, these got a lot of little petals, they're circular, these leaves are kind of pointy. So it would be describing stuff like that in English. Reading a literary passage, so can you read it and then can you understand what you just read? Because I know sometimes a lot of us, myself included especially, read something, and when you read it and read it and read it and you go back and you reread it, sometimes you lose and your eyes are tracking, but your mind isn't paying attention. So, or are you paying attention, and are you having trouble understanding what you read? Some people, when they learn a second language, they can either read it and understand it, or it has to be spoken to them for them to understand it. I tend to do both, but I don't have access to books in Spanish, so I don't have the best written comprehension in Spanish. However, for me to pronounce something, I do need to see it written. So what else is there? Already said that. Read a passage. Writing. So you need to write about an experience. Can you recall something that happened to you? Can you talk about it in a journal, basically? So it would be, these things are fairly simple, and of course, as you go older in higher up in your grade level, and as you go higher up in age and in understanding, and it's a measure. It's a test, yes, but it's not a test. It's not they want to find out what you know so that they can help you. It's an assessment of where the student lies in their understanding, not you need to know this by this age. And if something isn't clicking, then we can find it and help them. And the last slide, because I'm also running out of time. After the test is meant to monitor students' English fluency and track their progress. So like I said, we want to track their progress and see, look, here's where you are now. Here's where you used to be. You've done so much. Let's keep going because you're almost there. I'm very encouraging as a teacher, and I really hope that other teachers are encouraging, especially when it comes to this test, because as much as I am desperate to learn Spanish, I don't have the resources like this that a student who, knowing Spanish coming into an English-speaking school, would know, which I'm a little jealous actually, but I'll figure out some way to learn Spanish later in life. EL students continuously take this test annually. So they take it every year until they reach a level of English proficiency and academic proficiency that allows them to become reclassified as fluent English proficient students. They do not take away the English learner they're reclassified. So throughout the academic career, throughout my academic career, I'm dyslexic. I have an IEP, and I was a part of the RSP program all throughout junior high and high school. And when I got to college, I graduated out of the program, so I'm still reclassified, but I don't have access to all of the accommodations that I used to, but I don't use them anymore. So I don't need them anymore because I've gotten to the point where I don't need them. So it's the same thing with these students. We want to make sure that they are academically proficient in English, and they become reclassified as did I not have that? RFEP. I cannot remember what that means. Fluent English Proficiency. Oh, I guess that's what it is. Reclassified as Fluent English Proficiency. And so yes, that's what happens. They are reclassified and they still get aid if they need it, but they shouldn't because they now know English.